This is Joe with CloudFirst Labs, here to show how to call an API from MuleSoft RPA. It's often really important to be able to integrate MuleSoft RPA with other systems, even more modern systems sometimes that are API based. And in this case, we're going to show how to do that for an OAuth-secured API. So if we were to do this from Postman, what we would see is we would need to first get a token, and so we would make a call to get a token, then we would use that token, stick it as a header. So we're going to see that here as a header bearer token for the call to the actual API. So we see an example API here. I'm going to send this request, and boom, we get a response. So that's what it looks like in Postman. Let's see MuleSoft RPA display that same capability. And of course, the RPA can then go on to use the data returned by this response payload for whatever purposes are required of the process. So let's pop over here to MuleSoft RPA Builder. And the key steps that we're going to have here are, first, we're going to set up some activity parameters. We're going to set up one activity parameter for the actual API URL, one for the OAuth token URL, and one for the OAuth client credentials. So the client ID and client secret used to get back a valid token. That valid token comes back from that OAuth token URL and gets used as a header, as a bearer token for authorizing and authenticating to the API URL. So that's the process we're going to see here. And there are a few key steps here. Don't be intimidated by how many steps are here. Most of these are just there to for the demonstration that will go on later, just to output things onto the screen. But the key steps are going to be the REST call to get an OAuth token. So we're going to create a REST call to hit that OAuth token URL that we configured as an activity parameter. In our case, we're going to use a post, and we are going to go ahead and set that OAuth token URL. And then as a header parameter, we're going to set a couple. We can use a blank payload for this token URL call. So I'll just call that out. That's why this is blank. Header parameter, we have to set a couple. Content type is equal to application xwww form URL encoded, except it accepts anything, so */*. For query parameters, we're going to set grant type equal to client credentials, and scope. I've set up this API with a couple of kind of dummy scopes, my scope 1 and my scope 2. That's going to differ from API to API, but you can set that here as a query parameter. Then on the authentication tab here, we're going to use basic auth, and we're going to map the OAuth client credentials activity parameter, which holds the client ID and client secret used to generate a real token. So that REST call is going to be set up, and once that comes back, it's going to return a response payload, and we're going to have to parse the access token value out of that response body. So that's what this JSON query action step is for here. So, REST call you can find in the toolbox. Same thing. JSON query, you can find it in the toolbox. And that's what we've got configured here. So for JSON object, we're going to go ahead and find that REST call that we just created, and we're going to grab the response body from that. And then we're going to parse out of that $.access token, that's the JSON path, to the access token value that we care about. And then we're going to make a follow-up REST call. This is the one we really care about to make the API call. So we're going to map the API URL activity parameter in here to the base URL. And then the rest of these details are going to be specific to whatever API you're calling. Mine, it takes in field 1 and field 2 as the request payload body, and it takes in a post. The other thing we're going to care about is the authentication tab, where The authentication type for this API is bearer token, and then we're going to map that token that we parsed out using that JSON query action step. So we're going to, that JSON query action step first item that was parsed out, that's what's going to be used. We'll click OK. After that, we can use another JSON query action step to parse out any data from the response payload that we care about. So with that, we saw how this was set up. Let's see it in action. So we run it from RPA Builder. I pop up a notepad here. That's what most of those action steps were for in that RPA process that you saw. It's just kind of narrating what is happening. So we're about to call the OAuth token URL. Hey, we got it. Now we're printing it out here in the notepad. So we have this giant long OAuth access token. Now we're going to use that OAuth access token in our follow-up call to the actual API. Hey, we did, and we got back a response. We're printing out the individual field values that came back. And then I'm going to pop up the actual JSON response that came back. We can see it brought those 4 fields back. So that is how you set up a MuleSoft RPA process to interact with an API, even if that API is secured by OAuth 2.0. So MuleSoft RPA, great for integrating all sorts of systems, including API-based systems. Thank you very much for watching, and good luck on your MuleSoft RPA journey.